Hello and welcome to the Ottawa Herald's 2012 Kansas Primary Candidate Interviews. I'm Bobby Burch and I'm here with Stanley Wiles. Stanley Wiles is a Democratic candidate seeking election in Kansas' new 59th House District, which encompasses northern Franklin County and all of Ottawa. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Wiles.
Sure.
Well, let's get started. Just to get a little bit more background about you, what's some of your experience in politics?
Not much. I ran for Congress in this district in 2000. I ran for a couple of state representative jobs when I was living in Missouri a couple of times.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, why would someone want to vote for you?
Well, I think I have the best program for this district. Number one is education. I think the legislature in Kansas passed a $2.5 billion tax cut and over a 6.2 revenue stream that they have, and I think education is something that they are going to try to cut. They got to cut somewhere. They got to cut social services, cut infrastructure and education, and I just don't think that we can cut education I think we're shortchanging our children if we do that.
Well, just to get a little bit more background, what's some of your work experience, and how might some of your work experience translate into a job with the state?
Well, I don't know if that would translate. I mean, when you run for political office, I mean, most people run for the first time, or you bring a set of ideas. My ideas are to emphasize education, to have create jobs. They said at the forum last night that unemployment in Franklin County is 7.5%, and statewide is 5%. 7.5 is way too high, and I think a state representative can get to work with the mayor and the people in this district to try to get jobs to this area, and that's one of the things. And then the other thing is in state government, if there's efficiencies that can be made, everybody wants efficiency in state government.
Okay. So why did you opt to run for state office?
I've always been interested in politics, and I just think that I could be part of the process and try to make a difference for the people of this area.
Well, to give our viewers a better sense of who you are, could you tell me a little bit about how you're involved in the Franklin County community?
Well, I go to First Methodist Church. That's, I guess, the biggest involvement.
Okay. Well, in yesterday's candidate forum, you mentioned, and you previously mentioned, that education is your highest priority. Why is that?
Well, like I said there, I was influenced by the Charlie Rose show on PBS and with the mayors of Chicago, Baltimore, Louisville, and Jacksonville. Met with Charlie Rose, and he asked them what was the highest priority for their cities, and they didn't say, well, capital spending or unions or infrastructure or anything like that. They all said education. Well, if the mayors of those big cities all think that education is the most important thing in their city, then I think that we've got to do the same thing. We must make education the highest priority, and that'll cure a lot of ills in this society.
Well, from your observations and experience, do you think that there are some necessary improvements in the education system in Kansas?
Well, I'm not an educator. I think that my primary emphasis would be monetary. we have to have enough money to teach our children to compete for the jobs in the 21st century. I mean, K through 12, we've got to do that, and then colleges after that. We have to make education a priority. If you do that, then our children have a better chance to compete for jobs and interesting jobs and high-paying jobs in the 21st century.
If you were elected to this state office, how would you work to make that a priority in legislature?
Well, I would try to get on the education committee, and as the bills come up, as as bills come up, you try to make sure you talk to the experts and people like KNEA, Kansas National Education Association, and see what are their priorities and what are the best things, and then you craft a formula about how to best educate our children.
Well, also in that forum yesterday, you said that creating jobs in the district is a high priority of yours. If you're elected, how would you plan to stimulate job growth?
Well, the main thing is getting companies and businesses to come to this area, and that is something that it's a process. It's not something that you can say, hey, XYZ company, come here and we'll give you all this kind of stuff. You need to contact, first the state representative needs to contact the mayor, city fathers, and people in charge in this area, and get a coordinated strategy, and then approach companies that believe that would be interested in coming here. And education is a primary attraction. We've got, as far as I can tell, a good school system, and Ottawa University. I think that's a plus. And if you, but it's not something that just happens. You have to work at it. You have to contact companies, and it's just not something that you say, hey, company, come here. We got all this stuff. You need to say, contact them, see what their needs are, see what they bring to the area, see what they can do in job role, and then approach them and try to convince them to come to this area.
Well, a large part of Franklin County's economy relates to agriculture. Just wondering if you have any experience in agriculture, or how would you try to work to promote agricultural lifestyles?
No, I have no experience in agriculture except my father-in-law owns a farm east of Ottawa. So I don't know what their problems are. I would try to find out what their problems are and see what the legislature could do to help.
Well, after Kansas' new budget was passed, the legislative research staff projected a combination of income and sales taxes would create a large budget shortfall that could increase to nearly $2.5 billion by 2018. And I was just wondering if you had any problems with Kansas' new budget and what those problems might be.
Well, basically, the question is in the future, because it's between 2012 and 2018. I went to the Ottawa Board of Education meeting on Monday, and it didn't seem like the district was having any budgetary problems. But the problem is on the out years from 2012 to 2018, what are going to be when you cut and give the state almost a 50% haircut on the income coming in? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to try to cut there? And I think it's inevitable they're going to look to education, infrastructure, social services, that type of thing. And if we cut education, it's got to be you got to be smart about this. You can't just say, well, we can cut education. I just don't. If cutting education impacts our children adversely, then I think the state's going to really going to take a hit.
Well, if you were elected, how would you address the district's infrastructure and roads?
Well, I think, first of all, you've got the, was it K-68 going from Ottawa to Lawrence. I mean, I think that's a good thing. I'm sure I don't know what the spending are, but I mean, I think that's a good way to spend money. I think we haven't made a study of it, but I think we need to look at our roads, look at our highways, look at our bridges, and if they need to be fixed, then I think we got to provide the money to fix them.
Well, right now we're going to go to some reader questions. This first question is from Dean Catt, the superintendent of the Ottawa School District. Are public schools in Kansas currently being adequately funded?
See, I don't know that. I don't know if they're being adequately funded or not. That's why I went to the Ottawa Board of Education meeting, and it seemed like that they had adequate funding. Now, I don't know what the cuts were in the past and how that's affected the school district. But I think we have to. I mean, these educators, they're the experts. They're the ones that teach our kids, and I think we have to refer to them and see what they say about what adequate funding levels are. And then we have to make a determination, well, is this a good cut, or is this going to be harmful to our children? If it's harmful to our children, I'm going to be opposed to it.
And this next question is from Dale Reese. How do you feel about our Second Amendment and gun rights?
I support the Second Amendment. My father-in-law is a hunter. I've got no problem with upholding the Second Amendment.
This next question is from Rob McCallie. How would you fund public education in Kansas, or how do you think it should be funded?
See, I don't know that because I'm not, the only thing I know is I've got two grown sons that went through the Ottawa public school system. I don't know what the funding needs are, but the one thing I do know is that we must adequately fund education. What that would be, I don't know, but we have to adequately fund public education if we want to be a first-class state and not a second-class state.
Well, in an unrelated question, Franklin County's fair is coming up, and I was just wondering what you think of the county fair, and if you have any history with it, or if it's important, if you think it's important to the community.
No, I think it is. Yeah, I always had a good time. When my kids were growing up, we went to the fair every year. We had a good time. I approve of it.
All right. And one last pressing question that might be pertinent to many of your potential constituents. You support the Kansas Jayhawks or the Kansas State Wildcats?
Oh, boy, put me on the spot. Well, both my sons went to KU, so I guess. But I think Bill Snyder's done an outstanding job at K-State, so.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in, Mr. Wiles. I appreciate it.
Okay.
And that concludes our interview with Mr. Wiles.
Thank you.
Thanks.